let's move across to the next big boy, or should I say big sky, shall we?
Let's move up to the sky.
Let's move up to the skies. This is here. If I bring this up here so we can see up on here, we have a brand new plugin from Strymon. Now, Strymon, kings of plugins, you might say. That might be putting them on
pedals, not plugins.
Sorry, yes, pedals. Yeah, completely. Yeah. They've just brought out a plugin version of the Big Sky. Now, I know I've got a Big Sky. Sunwarper, you've got a Big Sky, right?
Yep.
And Ian, like, do you have one in the? Probably got one in the studio.
No, but about the time that I'm looking for a hardware one, they decided to bring out a plugin.
Yeah, I have mixed feelings on this one, and I'm a huge proponent of the Big Sky as a pedal.
Why don't you lead it, Sunwarper?
Well, I believe the cost is $200.
It is $200.
And
yeah.
I think the Big Sky as a pedal is $400, which is quite expensive, but it's worth it for what it does as a pedal. It's got some great amp sims. Yeah, it does all of that. I guess it's the exact same thing, which is awesome. But for $200, I mean, there's free alternatives that we always talk about. That I haven't even touched my Big Sky in over a year because of said alternative that's free and a plugin. So I think 200 misses the mark quite drastically, and I'm sure there's reason for it and stuff, but it just doesn't seem right.
I'm sure it's quality software as well.
Oh yeah.
Every faith in them, and I'm sure their algorithm kicks ass as well. But
yeah, the pedal's incredible. I mean, and this is that on your computer, which is awesome. But I have some concerns.
I've ranted about in the past about. I like software. I love the Total Recall, the fact that you can bring everything back the way it was. It really helps when you're trying to mix an album or track, or do your last overdubs and whatever. And you can just bounce between songs and so on. But it really bothers me that I'm tied to software and a certain OS version and a certain this and a certain that. And at some point, it's going to become obsolete. Or since Sunwarper mentioned the awesome Alchemy synth. I used to have Alchemy until they were bought by Apple, and then all of a sudden all their stuff stopped.
Yeah.
A load of good plugins that, all right, you could use them for a bit, but as your OS starts to get upgraded, they become obsolete. You can't use them anymore. And so that's why I started going a little bit more down the hardware route, so that you've got a thing that you could still have in 20 years or something, and it still works and so on. And I think the more things have computers in them, and we start to be reliant on certain operating systems and drivers and things like that, it just means that your money ultimately has got a shelf life. And then you've got to buy something else, or you've got to upgrade, or you've got to do this. And they're not always compatible. Some bits of kit may need you to upgrade, other bits of kit can't upgrade anymore. They don't do any more drum kit drivers for my drum kit, so I can't go beyond a certain level with that. Otherwise, I'll lose compatibility with that. So, yeah, there comes a point where I keep a split between software and hardware because there's benefits to both that we will all understand. But it does worry me a bit that that's why I liked the Big Muff idea, the fact that it's a plug-in, but it's hardware, right? And if all goes wrong and that all this stuff stops being supported and doesn't work anymore, you've still got a pedal, right?
Yeah.
That works, This is what concerns me. I want my stuff to work forever and ever. Yeah. Never need to be serviced.
Good luck with that. In the subscription world we live in today, yeah, good luck.
You know what I mean, though.
Oh, yeah. And Curtis, what's your take on this as a Big Sky owner?
Well, in a similar fashion, again with the price, $200. I mean, if I'm going to spend $200 on something, I'm going to buy a synthesizer VST as opposed to an effect VST. Especially when we've got the beauties of the plugins that we shall not name.
Duper passive?
Exactly.
It rhymes with it, yeah.
It does, yeah. And I as ever with me as well, I wonder about CPU. These high-end, these high-end plugins they always eat a lot of CPU. And if you're on a laptop, or if you're on a budget laptop or something like that, or a budget computer or an old computer, I suppose it's just going to eat you up, and you put it on one effects chain and suddenly you can't do anything else.
I wonder if there's any communication between the pedal and the plugin in a similar vein to the Big Muff that Beyond Lake was talking about. I didn't see anything, and I don't think there is. There may come a time, because I believe the Big Sky has MIDI and USB, does it not?
It does, yeah. It does, yeah. So that I mean, that would be an interesting way to kind of see if it can talk. Like you can recant or if you keyed in a tone on your hardware, if you could then emulate that in VST or vice versa. That would be a really interesting thing to do. I'd like to see that.
Pedal as a controller for the VST.
Yeah, and then you can save those things that you made on the computer into because you can save patches on the Big Sky, so it'd be cool to have that crossover. I would hope, I mean, that was the other thing. There's no, that I've seen, discount for people who own a Big Sky to get the pedal. And I would hope, I mean, if they do start doing communication between the two or something, or if there already is, but I didn't see anything about it, I would hope that they do something to that effect. I mean, that would be a very pro-consumer friendly move, but we'll see.
We'd like to see where it goes out. We'd like to know what you guys in the chat think about this kind of thing. We all know about what's the phrase? We also know how the greatness of Strymon is. Is this going to be emulated in the VST version? You know, is it something that you'd spend $200 on? Let us know.
Yeah, I have a feeling we'll see their other pedals being released in this format too, if it goes well.
I feel that we'll get that way.
I'd like to know what people think about, you know, how much money do you want to be spending on plugins and instruments versus effects? Obviously, you know, Curtis has got a bias there, and I think I'm with him on that one, really. Does feel that way? I mean, you know, I'd rather have an instrument that creates a lot of different sounds, especially if it's sample based or something, compared to a reverb. I mean, a good reverb goes a long way, and you know, but I do have a couple already, sort of thing. So,
I mean, it is also a case of, I know that it is a case in our world, but the more you spend, generally speaking, the higher the quality. In generally speaking, like for example, I know that Laug uses it. He posted a screenshot on his Facebook the other day. I know that he uses it, and I mean, he makes a very lush ambient. So it might be a case of it's one of those where you buy the plugin and suddenly you're an ambient king. You know what I mean? Like,
you don't need that one for that though.
True. But like, yeah, just maybe. But again, $200 is a hell of a price tag for VST. You can buy, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, you can buy a few entry-level Spitfire VSTs for that and make yourself an orchestral beauty. Hey, so if you like that clip, consider going across to YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Music to check the full Audionautic Deep Space Network live stream.
Yeah, and if you want to join us for the next live stream, they are on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. UTC.
And finally, we do have the Audionautic Radio playlist, which is in the description below. Some of the greatest cross-section of the underground electronic world that you see. IDM, ambient, down-tempo, you name it, it's in there. It's great. Curated by Sunwarper.
Yeah, so if you're looking to find some new music or just see what's new in the electronic sphere, head to that link in the description, and we hope to see you at the next Audionautic Deep Space Network.
Thanks for watching. See you around.
If you're a fan of IDM or Aphex Twin in general, you may have seen that there was a new software that came out. It's free to download, I think on GitHub. It's a collaboration from Aphex Twin and Dave Griffiths. It's called Sample Brain. And this thing looks trippy. So our producer extraordinaire, Curtis here, was able to download it and did a little bit of work on it. So he's going to take us through the software, and then we'll hear a couple of the sound sources or sounds that he's created through it. I haven't heard it yet. I haven't used it. But from everything he said, it sounds like it makes some crazy sounds.
The one thing we have worked out is... one thing I have worked out is that itself is quite CPU intensive, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I wouldn't say it's like massively CPU intensive. I also, as I say pretty much every week at this point, I'm working on a very old laptop. So it's quite CPU intensive, but it is bloody amazing. So basically, I'll bring this up here so that you can kind of see the extent of it.
As you bring it up, let me just run through what Aphex Twin describes it as. So he says, what if you could reconstruct source audio from a selection of other MP3s/audio on your computer? What if you could build a 303 riff from only acapellas or bubbling mud sounds? What if you could sing a silly tune and rebuild it from classic music files? You can do this with Sample Brain.
In theory, yes, you can. Very much so. It's... how do you describe this? Basically, it mangles sounds together. And it basically takes a number of samples that you can load into it, chops it up into its own pieces with algorithms, and then spits it out in a different fashion. And
interesting.
I mean, you could create a 303 sound from an acapella if you really wanted to.
Or bubbling mud.
Or bubbling mud, yes, very much so. It's a little bit more ad hoc than that. I mean,
Okay.
but I mean that's, I suppose, it's the fun of it, I suppose. So this is the key of it in its own right. And basically, you start by loading sounds here. This is what it is here. I've loaded. Okay, so I've noticed I've been playing around with the demo pack that it gives you.
Mhm.
I've been playing around with some samples that you can put in. It works best with short samples. Now I've loaded in some longer samples, which are like between 6 and 11 seconds, and it doesn't like it as much. But if you cut them down to about between 1 and 3 seconds, that seems to be fine. I think it's one of those that the more time you have, and the more kind of the amount of time you're willing to wait, the more it will mangle it, and the bigger samples you can have. It just takes a bit longer.
Gotcha.
For consistency's sake, and for the purposes of this demonstration, I'm using the demo pack.
Okay.
So basically, you load the sounds that you see here, and then we have 4. So we have a clunk, a flitter, a sequence, and a flatter. These are basically one-shots, and the clunk, and they do sound like clunk on their own. You can listen to them. It just had the door shutting and stuff like that, and it's fine. So I downloaded a load of one-shots from Splice for drums, and then which worked just as fine. But then also I got some like different like harps and trumpets and oboes and stuff like that.
Nice.
Put them through. They worked fine, just less effective or slower, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So you get the sound in, and then what are some of your tweaking options?
So, well, that is one to be experimented with. Basically, they don't make much sense on their own. But okay, so first off, you say regenerate brain. So everything. Okay, so it goes basically from right to left. So you add this is your brain here, right? And then you generate the brain, where basically it cuts them up and puts them in order, essentially, right?
Right.
And you can choose. They're all random. So how often or how big the chunks are, for example, how much or how often they're cut up. Then whether or not those blocks which have been chopped up overlap over each other, so you've got some resampling there and that kind of thing. And then what seems to be the window shape, which I think I've fathomed, is basically here have a different kind of like waveform or something like that, essentially. So yeah, that comes right. So this is what you do here, and then you can save, if you want to, you can save that brain just as it is.
Okay.
And then you can come back to it later before you go into the brain tweaks on this side here. Now, from what I've found, novelty, boredom, and stickiness, it's technically spelt wrong, but stickiness is there.
English teacher is coming out right now.
So yeah, so I found that if you play with these 3, you get the most variety coming through. Frequency and dynamics, these are more like your kind of like your sound design stuff.
Okay.
But then getting like different sounds, different literally different novel ideas in your sample, these are the best ways to kind of get it done. You can then stretch these samples, for example, coming through. The algorithm, they have their own algorithms which are named thus: basic, reverse, synaptic, and slide. I found the most fun personally with synaptic, but I mean, you do what you want to get done. And then you can kind of come through here and tweak with these a little bit more. I can't play the sound through here, so we're going to go over to the Google Drive where we put some stuff up so you can see. But the ways that we can make that work is very varied in what they do. You can sample your sample before you record it by just hitting play, put it through, and then you hit record, and it will send it directly into, in my case, it sent it into my downloads because that's the default, but you obviously have to change it if you want to. You can then, it'll do it as a WAV file, and then obviously you can put that into your DAW or your sampler, in your case your SP404 Sunwarper. You put them through, you can mangle them. I think again, the fun is with the novelty, the boredom, and the stickiness. And if you want more kind of like melodic stuff, you want more novelty. If you want more glitchy, more techno-y stuff, maybe bring the boredom up and bring the novelty down. But that's you go have fun, basically. So
that's the beauty of it, right? To just explore it.
Yeah, exactly. So for now, I'm going to bring this up and bring up these guys I've got here. Let's bring up this tab here. Let's do sample. Let's do this one. I don't know which one this is, but let's go with this one for now. So.
Whoa. That's cool.
Wow, that's weird. Now you can do longer if you want. I just did a short one for the purpose of demonstration.
Right.
But you can elongate them if you want to.
Okay.
Let's do that again. That's really rugged.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And do you recall what the sound source was? Was it like the clank thing or something?
These are all from the demo.
Yeah.
These are all from
okay.
the demo.
Cool. Yeah.
So you can chop them up, do them as you wish. Now I did the same thing. Hang on, if I show this tab instead. So I do this one here.
Mm-hmm.
You do the same thing. I think this one I increased the novelty and lowered the boredom and played around with some of the other parameters. It's all very ad hoc and it was very just kind of random to kind of do it. A bit more Morse codey, a bit different.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's one of the same samples, which has then just been done in a different way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll play it one more time. Just a bit, like. I used to have a hearing test when I went to the hospital when I was a kid, and like that.
When you have to click,
that, you know.
Right? When you hear a beep, you've got to click. Yeah.
Again, so this is just fucks with the parameters in a different way. Same samples coming through.
Now, did you make any 303 sounds from a bubbling mud?
I'm not quite sure I'm that good a producer.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure I'm that good a producer.
I think you're too humble.
Again,
but all right.
I'd say maybe it's something, but we'll have to see. So like the jumping off points and the ability to use something as a sample and create something. You could chop that up and turn that into a drum beat. You could stick Valhalla on there and suddenly you've got an ambient drone. You know? Like
you're speaking my language now.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless on this, and it's a really novel way of creating some form of just jumping off point for your production. I can imagine again taking that through modular and then resampling that and seeing what happens when you stick that through. That would just, you could do anything with that.
So do you foresee any ways of incorporating that into your workflow as it stands now, like in normal song or in your normal songs or something, or is that kind of like you want to just start with those sounds and build something around it?
If it were me, or at this point, what sprung to mind in the first instance is I would take that WAV file, I would put that into Ableton, I would chop it up either by hand or in Ableton. I suppose in Logic as well, you can just cut up by beats, for example, and I would then turn that into a drum beat. That would be where I would start with me on that one.
Interesting.
Yeah, for the Morse codey stuff, for example, maybe turn it into a little arpeggiator, repitch it, that kind of thing. Go from there. That would be what I would do with that. Again, that's just me, just purely thinking about something on the way through.
It seems like a really good idea generator.
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of where we kind of want to go with. If you're stuck, or if there's something that you don't want to. Or if you're stuck in a rut in terms of the studio or something like that, this could be a really good way to get past that, trying something new, getting a new process coming through.
And it's free. If anybody wants to download it, I think it's free over on GitHub.
It's on GitLab, which is supposed to GitHub, the same thing? I don't know. I'm going to put it in the chat now.
Yeah, I mean, you know us, we love free stuff, especially Valhalla, but this seems like another really cool, just throw it on, see what you can make, and go from there. Little idea generator. Our podcast is on Apple Podcast and Spotify, and so if you like to listen to podcasts over there, you can head over to Audionautic on it. The links are also in the description, and if you'd be so kind as to leave a rating and or a review, it helps a ton, and we appreciate it. And if you need some new music, check out the Audionautic radio playlist. That is also in the description. It's updated about every week. There's some really cool tracks on there, and if there's anything you want to submit, you can DM myself or the Audionautic Twitter, and we'll give it a listen.
So yeah, thank you very much. See you next week. Take it easy.
Thanks for watching. We are talking about pulse stretch first, I believe, right? This is a very cool ambient tool. I mean, you can use it for a lot of stuff, but it's big in ambient, or if you see like 10-hour videos of a song where it's super slowed, that's pulse stretch.
So for context, this was originally part of Audacity, wasn't it?
I don't know if it was originally part of Audacity, but it was in Audacity for sure.
Yeah, it's available, certainly.
Yeah, it was part of it, definitely. So extreme time stretching, they say this is the Paul X Stretch. It's an app, but it's also a program for, I think, Mac and Windows. I have it on my iPad and my iPhone. It's free, which is the best part. It's based on the Paul Stretch algorithm, so it can do really long time stretching without changing the pitch much, but it has a ton of effects in it to change the way the things sound. Like I was messing with a sample I made, which I'll play a little bit of this sample, but I started messing with like the frequency shifts and tonal versus noise, and it just became this screeching violin sound. It's like, what the hell? How'd that happen? But it can do these crazy things. I'd be curious to know in the chat if anybody has experience working with Paul Stretch and whether they're looking at getting this app, because it's really cool.
Very much so. I mean, Spectre is a big fan of this. A lot of us in the ambient. I mean, let's face it, it's mainly an ambient tool. Who else needs to be
Well, no, I think it has its merits outside of ambient. That's what I'm going to be exploring. You can take, like in the video I'm going to show, I took the end of a remix I did for a competition for the band Thrice, which had all these guitars, basses, things like that, and I made this total ambient thing. But with that in mind, you could take any sample or sound and create these ambient pads out of it that you could then sidechain to a kick or anything like that to get some really cool sounds.
Well, without much further ado, do you want to show us what you've been tinkering with behind the scenes?
Yeah, so this is just a quick 2-minute video. I'm going to be doing a longer video over on my channel with this performance, whatever you want to call it, as a basis, either tomorrow or Tuesday. It's been a busy week, so I don't know if I'll get it done by tomorrow, but if you want to see more, you can check that out. But so like I said, I sent this sample through Paul Stretch into my SP, and I was doing some effects on the SP. So let's check it out.
So, a wonderful little demo there. Very ambient, very nice. Straight for Valley View Records, that one. That'd be beautiful. Really easy. You say that you were saying in the break that you didn't only just scratch the surface of it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I just messed with sending something through really quick. I didn't even do that long of a stretch, so you can change the stretch drastically to be, like 10 hours long. So I think I only did like 5 or 6, maybe it was 7, I can't remember, but I was going before that to about 21, and you get very different sounds. But what I really like is the effects. It even has just EQ, so you can cut a lot of that muddy low end that Paul Stretch usually gives, so you can just get that right out of there. I should also say, if you saw on the SP in that video, I was playing a pattern. All those samples I had resampled from the beginning of the track running through Paul Stretch, so it was just more Paul Stretch goodness, but resampled into the SP.
The reason it was popular is because you can stretch any audio you want, and then you can stretch it and stretch it and stretch it. The problem you get is glitches and artifacts and so on. Because of the anti-aliasing in it, it gives you something smooth and usable, and that's why it got so popular. This new version seems to give you even more control over the heavily modified output that you get. So
and it even has a compressor. And even cooler than that, if you saw on the bottom just before the audio file, you can move the routing of all the effects, and even where the Paul Stretch is, like where the stretch is starting. So you could put all the effects first and then stretch, or you can move things. It's very cool. This is just incredible what you can do with it. And like I said, I was just hitting the tip of the iceberg there. So I really think if you start doing more resampling with it, treating it with effects and things like that, you can get some crazy sounds that aren't just ambient.
Yeah.
I wonder if Thomas will have an EP ready by the end of the show.
Yeah.
He's moving quick. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Either way, I think we lost him. But performing a service.
Yeah, we're good. Here to serve.
No, you know what? He could resample us talking over it.
Yeah.
It could be, it could be a thing.
It could be a thing. Yeah, if people want to sample us, put it in Pull Stretch, see what happens, and make some drone bangers. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
to see.
drone bangers.
We'll play him on the show. There we go. Put him in our Discord
Thomas said,
channel.
"Hold my beer." He's on it.
Be nice to see. If you want to drop him in our Discord channel, that'd be really cool. Our Discord channel is somewhere where we're breathing some fresh life into it. So if you are on Discord and you fancy it, come on down and say, hey, we hang out a little bit, and it's always good fun.
If Thomas's track is good enough, maybe it'll make the Audionautic playlist.
Oh, wow. You guys are on it with the transitions today, man. Yeah, we do have a playlist. It's got the latest in electronic and independent music. If you want to check it out, it's in the description. If you want to submit, you can send your music over to my socials or the Audionautic Twitter, and I'll give it a listen and let you know.
Yeah. Extra points for Paul stretching us.
Hey, so if you like that clip, consider checking out our full live stream, Audionautic Deep Space Network, on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, and you can also join us for the live stream of said podcast at 7 p.m. UTC, 11 a.m. Pacific.
Wonderful, yes. And finally, we have got the Audionautic Radio playlist, which is down in the description below. All the latest and the greatest of the underground electronica world that you see there. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, if you're looking for some new music or checking out some of the newest in electronic music, head to that link in the description, and we will see you in the next ADSN. Thanks for watching. What is in the news today?
Yeah.
We've got some exciting stuff today.
We got some exciting stuff. We've got a lot of gear, we've got a lot of hardware, but we're going to start with Bliss. We found Bliss on Synthopia, and then we just tweeted out that we're talking about them this week, and they sent us some licenses for their new synthesizer that are really aptly named Megalit soft synth. I bloody love this name.
Yeah, it's a good name.
It is. And so Sunwarper and I had a little playthrough, had a little stuff. So we've got a few pre-recorded videos for the first time. I'm going to try this for a little bit. We've done a bit of a walkthrough of what it sounds like and what it looks like. And then Sunwarper's gone and performed on it as well. So yeah, it's a great little thing. It's for iOS and for desktop. It's a wavetable synth. It's got 4 independent LFOs. And patch. What I really love is patch randomization. You can roll a dice and it will just create a patch out of nothing.
Everyone should do that. Love it.
It's great, isn't it? So yeah, should we show them what it's all about, Sunwarper?
Yeah. So as Curtis mentioned, we'll start with a little bit of a walkthrough that Curtis made, and then we'll give a sound demo that I made over in Logic. But we'll start with his. So let me switch over to it.
Quick disclaimer.
Oh yeah, quick disclaimer. Thank you very much, Ian Lake. They sent us these licenses, but they haven't told us what to say or anything. It's just,
they don't have any control over the content, but
no.
They were kind enough to provide licenses for it.
The company Bliss have released a new soft synth called the Megalit. As you can see from the screen itself, it is incredibly vibrant visually. And everything is a visual aspect. You can see the waveforms on the wavetable. The ADSN is completely visual. Everything that you can see there is built for the visual aspect, and that's what I think really makes this synthesizer work. Now, they were kind enough to send Sunwarper and I a couple of licenses to start playing around, and yeah, that's what we've been doing basically. So I thought I'd take you through what I've been doing. So if I bring you up here, everything you see here has been made using the Megalit. So we start off with the bass. In that lush. We have a high drone, which I've frozen out just for CPU. Very nice. We have a low drone, again, for frozen out for CPU. I made this kind of glitchy thing from a preset. Made around with a bit of shimmer and a bit of a granulizer also from Blias. There's a bit of auto pan, but I don't know if you can pick that up right there. Kind of a bit glitchy, a bit nice, following the bass line. And then I went into their rhythmic patterns. So we have some hats, just keyed out on a MIDI controller, and a kick. So this is all, like I say, this is all from the Megalith in its own right. And the only signal chains from after it are, again, they're all Blias, but it's sometimes a little bit of reverb, sometimes a little bit of saturation, that kind of thing. But it's all, the basis is from this synthesizer. So let's have a listen. So that's just a small snippet, nothing massive. You can see what it does though. It's incredibly versatile. Great for pads, great for glitchy electronic stuff, percussion, drones. I haven't gone into it. Well, you can't see the example here, but there's a great amount of keys in there, for example, as well. It's a very versatile synth. So yeah, I'll go check it out if I were you. So we had a bit of a breakdown and we had a performance, and those are all presets. I added a few bits in the effects chain, but kept the presets to what they are. And those presets are just pure inspiration straight off the bat.
Yeah.
Oh, that is amazing. And just the visual aspect of it, just how colorful, vibrant it is, and how dynamic the whole thing is. It's lovely. It's lovely.
Yeah, I should say I used shimmer for the pad. I faded it in, so it started without any, it was all dry, and then I brought it to about 20 to get a little shimmering effect, and then that was the Space Sheep preset, adjusted a little bit, and then I used the Boards preset for the arpeggio I also had shimmer, but I did no pitch shifting. It was just like background extra reverb and stuff like that. Very cool. I really enjoyed the presets. I will say it's a very deep synth. And so it'll take a little time to really get all the nuances and subtleties of it and how to make a patch, like a very complex patch, similar to the ones that are the presets. So it's something I feel like it sounds great right out of the box, so to speak. It's a plugin, but giving it time and learning it, it will reap a lot of benefits. But Ian, what did you think about the synth?
Sold.
Of course it is. Yeah.
I don't know why I even asked.
Well, not that I'm an easy popper or anything, but every now and then somebody does create a bit of software that makes you fall in love with plugins again. As somebody who's really into hardware, and
yeah,
I mean, it's like you said, it's an inspiration box, with presets that good, and that's your starting point. The quality of the effects, the reverb, the shimmers, and so on, that they sound really good. Quite often these things can sound a little bit grainy or a little bit 16-bit or something. They just, it's gonna set me off. I just know it. So I was just listening to that thinking, oh, ideas. So, yeah, I really like it. What's the list price for it?
Well, it's currently it's on a Black Friday sale, so it's on $50 for the desktop right now, and it's 15 USD for the app in the App Store. So it's on desktop and it is on mobile devices as well. So yeah, usually the synth itself is about 99, but you can snap it up for half price right at the moment.
Even full price, it sounds like a bit of a bargain in the sense of like sound quality.
Yeah, it's pristine for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's what we're going to be talking as we go into the next couple of segments. We're going to be talking about prices and how much we pay for our gear and our soft synths. I mean, and how much is worth for that personally for $50 or even for $100, like you say, to get all that coming out of just that. It's wonderful.
Doesn't sound like a plug-in. It sounds like something good going through something else, something good, and then probably a third something good as well.
Well, there's a suite of effects built in. I saw some chorus, reverb. There's probably other ones. And I also wanted to mention, I almost did a completely different song that was using just the boards patch and a bunch of pitch shifting. And it just had this incredibly lush sound. I mean, like Curtis said, it's definitely an idea generator. It's really fun to see. And I've been moving away from VSTs a lot lately. So that is pulling me back in, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody always does it, don't they? And this is an absolute prime candidate, really.
Yeah. Curtis, do you want to put a link to their website in the chat if anybody wants to check it out?
I will, yes. I'll bring it up. I'll put it in the chat as we move across to the next segment.
Do they have a demo?
I don't know, actually, but we'll find out.
They have a couple of like demos on YouTube already, if that's what you mean.
Do you mean like a downloaded demo? Is that what you mean? You can download
that one that makes noise.
They might, because when I downloaded it, I was able to open it. The way you register the license, you download it first, you open it in your DAW, and then you put in the license. So you might be able to use it for like one of those things where it's 20 minutes or something to that effect. I'm not sure, but you were definitely able to open it in the DAW just from downloading it.
Sometimes hearing is believing, really, isn't it? Having a go yourself.
It is.
Definitely.
Oh, I see what you're saying. When I downloaded it and I installed it, I could play it, use it.
Oh, you could?
I had to register it. I had to register it before I could do anything with it. So yeah, that's a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
We'd like to know what you guys in the chat think, either listening live or chatting back. So if you like that clip, consider checking out our full live stream, Audionautic Deep Space Network on YouTube, Spotify, and on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, and you can also join us for the live stream of said podcast at 7 p.m. UTC, 11 a.m. Pacific.
Wonderful, yes. And finally, we have got the Audionautic Radio playlist, which is down in the description below. All the latest and the greatest of the underground electronica world that you see there. Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, if you're looking...
Should we move into the round robin?
Yeah, let's do it. This was, I believe, Eon Lake's.
Well, there was one news article that was going to.
Oh, that's right, the Spotify bit, right, or the streaming bit. Yeah, we should talk about that. Eon Lake, why don't you start it, and Curtis can bring up the article.
I was reading an article this week about the music business, and it was mainly from this guy at Universal Music Group, and then I saw this other article that references what he was saying. So yeah, they were talking about the number of tracks on streaming platforms. There's over 100 million on Apple Music now. Spotify doesn't have that many, but they are getting 100,000 tracks a day. There is some debate that is building these days about how this isn't necessarily a good thing. And if you care to scroll down a little bit, this guy at Solution Grange at Universal Music used this as a platform to start sharing his thoughts, which are essentially that this is ultimately going to become confusing to consumers, and that this is a business model that's going to be hard to sustain. And there's probably some truth to that, in the sense of Spotify obviously need compute resources and storage and so on in data centers to store all this music. 100,000 songs a week. Their costs are going up. There's some interesting information in this article about, what it costs them and how that is increasing over time, and the fact that they feel that this is confusing users, and that the algorithm is guiding people increasingly to low quality content, what he terms low quality content. Now, for anyone who's not quite sure what he means by that, I think he means any music that he hasn't invested in.
Jeez. Yeah, so there is a bias then here.
I think he's got hideous bias in the sense that, I'm spending all this money for all these artists. They're the ones you have to be listening to. All this other stuff can go elsewhere. Obviously, there are business arguments to support some of these views, and it does make you wonder where it's ultimately going to go, because the whole Spotify thing, it can't grow forever unless there are major revolutions in both power and data storage technology. So it does make you wonder where this is going. It sounds like they're already making an argument for trying to raise the bar of entry, or stem this ocean of new music that is being submitted all the time. That is, of course, low quality.
In their
non-Taylor Swift low quality stuff. Because he does cite her as a recent album as being an example of high quality content that keeps people on these platforms. This is the argument. So it almost sounds like he's worried about his bottom line being disturbed by just so much other music that people can't get to the gold that he's put all his money into. I'm being a little bit facetious. There are obviously some real points buried in this, and it's an interesting article. I would recommend reading it. And
we linked it in the chat if anybody wants to check it out.
Yeah, and that led me on to our question this week about this. So how exactly did I phrase it, Curtis?
We've got this here. So does the barrier to entry on digital storefronts need to be raised? Does this stifle new music? Who are the gatekeepers? Are we looking for a more decentralized model in the next evolution of music distribution?
So, I mean, does this mean that, because there's so much new music being produced and submitted and so on, is this something that is not sustainable? Does it mean that we should actually tier music in this way? Should it only be major artists that get a certain amount of plays a month that are allowed to be on the platform and so on? Is that sounded the way that particular individual thought it should go? That they mentioned that 90% of the people submitting music are getting less than 500 plays a month. It's just a waste of time.
I mean, to them that's a waste of time, but I'm sure to the people getting 500 plays, they're amazed that they're getting 500 plays. I mean, that's 500 people listening to your music. Yeah,
and everyone started somewhere, right?
Yeah,
everyone started at zero, and how far it goes is well. That's up to the people out there, isn't it?
Yeah, I think the definition that he's giving for quality is incredibly skewed and biased. And it kind of, while I think they're raising relevant points, it seems to, in my opinion, take away from everything he's saying, because I feel like his premise is already incredibly flawed and biased. I would love to hear from Curtis, though, as you usually don't get to talk first on these round robins. So,
I agree with you in the sense that this is obviously a very biased piece he's coming in here. I think it mentions somewhere in the article that he had actually had a hand. Grange gave the example of Taylor Swift's record-breaking Midnight's album as a high-quality release, and Taylor Swift in this week has hit the top 10.
We're talking about business and money, aren't we?
Yeah, so this is they're talking purely as a business platform and not as an artistic kind of expression.
But even then, if he has a vested interest in that album, it still just inherently is a flawed premise.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. So he's this is complete. I mean, I'm not surprised. It's from a website called musicbusinessworldwide.com. This idea is not coming from a sense of artistic self-expression at all. This is purely monetary. The idea that more people like it, therefore it must be better. Let's face it, that's bullshit. But like the idea that I think the real question is, where does this go? Because there's a good point in the sense that there's only a finite amount of server space, and there's only a finite amount of land which you can build server space on. And unless there is a change, where's it going to go? Now, I can't. The only thing I can see is you can have these package systems: bronze, silver, gold. How much do you want to pay in order to get onto a special server? Because how is that server routed? Are you going to get it? It's the same way that you get like priority space on Payola for playlists now. It'll be a case of the more you pay, the better stream.
Playlists that take
sketchy play. Yes. I mean, this whole thing is sketchy. Let's face it. This entire thing is sketchy in its own right. But yeah, it would just be another way of pay to play. Imagine that in the dying days. There's only 300. There's only 300 terabytes or whatever, 300,000 terabytes of data space left in the world. How that's going to be auctioned off to the highest bidder. That's the only way it's going to.
That's a great start to like a book. Or a movie. There's this much space left in the world. How does it get auctioned off? Some dystopian cyberpunk world. Yeah. Oh, I see it right there already.
And everyone's making lo-fi at this stage. Everyone's making lo-fi
and synthwave that's just four on the floor and like a pounding arpeggio bass. That's it.
Yeah.
some music-related Hunger Games thing going on. See who gets the last bit of storage.
There's just the three of us with a banana, apple, and a pedge lobbing through each other, just trying to get the last bit of space.
Yeah.
I mean, Shady's got it right, and he goes, "I will shut up in a minute, I promise." I guess we go back to physical formats, and I mean that's I think where Sunwarper comes in, because you do a lot more physical than I do. I don't do much physical. I do mainly digital. I mean, what do you think about that? What are your thoughts, Sunwarper?
I don't know. I mean, you talk about space. There's issues of space with physical too, in a real sense. Like
that's a good point.
Real tangible sense. Like some people I was reading recently or something were saying like I only buy albums I really, really love on physical because I just don't have the space to put it places and stuff. And I mean, that's a good point too. Maybe it actually was Eon like that said it. I feel like it was during an ADSN. So it might have been you that said it, because I remember someone was saying something like, yeah, I don't have the space. So there's an issue there. I think physicals are really cool and it's a bit more special. There's also, I hate to bring it up, but NFTs and things like that are seemingly coming up, but they've had their little slips lately. Interesting though, on the topic of space in streaming and things like that, I got an email from Amazon that Prime members are now getting access to more music on Amazon Prime or on Amazon Music. So originally, Amazon Music is a separate thing. You don't get it if you pay for Amazon Prime, but you got this like low tier. Yeah, it's very weird. It makes no sense. But you get this low tier version where there's like 2 million songs, which sounds like a lot, but when you really look at what they offer, it's not. But now they're upping it to 100 million songs for Prime members. So I thought that was interesting that you mentioned tiers and things like that. They actually opened up a more, for lack of a better word, beneficial tier for Prime members. Just an interesting little note. But I just, that article, I get what it's saying. It's not coming from the right place. So I'm just not vibing with it. I understand the points and they're making good points, but the second they bring in these horrible skewed biases where they have vested interests in what they're saying, so this should be listened to. It's like, well, of course you're going to say that. You have a vested interest in it. No. Like where do we draw the line on what's quality, what's not? Somebody that gets 50,000 listeners or something, and if those are just bots, how would we know? We have no way of knowing these things. And what about these smaller artists that are making livings off of their streamings, but they're not huge numbers, they just get decent? Like, is that considered quality, or is it only when you have all 10 of your album songs as the top 10 in the charts?
I mean, yeah, completely. And I feel, again, coming back to what Shady was saying about physical formats, proper decentralization, proper localization. Like, for example, I'm in Prague, right? So I'm a Prague-based musician, right? The globalization in the world and Audionautic, etc., has mean that it doesn't matter where I am, anyone can listen to my music. But 300 years ago, if I was a bard running around Prague with a lute, people would probably know me in Prague and maybe in Benešov, but they wouldn't know me outside of anywhere else in this world. And maybe that's kind of
lute dude as well.
That would be nice. Make it a loot, dude. But maybe that's where we're going. Like, again, decentralization, localization. People will know musicians in a very local level because I go out into the streets. Maybe that's what needs to happen in order to make it get by. it makes me think also, we thought, was it last week or the week before? We were chatting about creating a story and creating a brand. Was that last week?
Oh, man, I think that
was last week.
Yeah,
last week.
Been.
Time, man. It's
yeah,
weird.
that might have been the Link was talking about CDs.
Yeah, exactly. Like the idea again, in order to sell that, you're going to need a story. Now, these days, any lo-fi beat maker can have no face, no profile, and get 1 million streams on Spotify. Surely that'll be the end of that. Surely, has to be.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, and do you have anything else you want to add about it?
Well, I think it's headed one way, isn't it? I mean, like I said, without revolutions in storage technology and also power, I think they're going to have some interesting decisions to make ultimately about what their service is actually supposed to be, whether it's supposed to be all the music there is or just mainstream music, like the guy says in the article, just the really big selling stuff that most people want to hear, or that he thinks most people want to hear, the stuff that does the biggest numbers. I mean, it's odd. I went a bit with Shady on this in the sense that I thought, okay, well, so we've gone from making lots of copies of something and selling it and everybody having their own copy of it to then there was the file sharing and torrenting.
Napster.
Yeah, it was decentralized, wasn't it? Right. But it was also piracy and nobody was getting paid and so on.
Yeah.
And then, Spotify and Apple Music were like a reaction to that. So that was get all the music, get it together, throw it in a data center and give people access to it on a subscription basis. It's going to get to the point where that's just not manageable anymore, surely, at some stage. And then they're going to need to make a decision about what it is they're trying to provide. And if they want to provide all kinds of music and interesting music, or if they're just about the numbers and the middle of the road stuff and the churn, it'd be interesting to see. Does it mean we move back to a decentralized thing? Does it all have to go in one place and then give people access to it? If you're a musician and you want to share your music with the world, could you host that yourself? And there's a central resource that just links to it, and then it's like file sharing technology or something like that shares it around. I mean, I haven't got room for all the music in the world. I've got room for mine.
It makes me wonder so you're talking about a centralized place where we all have our music.
A link to a decentralized copy of the music. It doesn't all have to live in an Apple data center, in a Spotify data center. It could just be you keep the music. You don't upload it anywhere. You hang on to it, but you publish it somehow through an application and an infrastructure and so on, and people can buy it in exactly the same way or stream it, but it's not necessarily all thrown into a big data center and rows and rows and rows of storage.
The only issue with that might be cost per musician. Yeah. Like the entry basis point for that.
Absolutely. When we have to pay for everything already anyway, from the very word go and all the instruments and everything, everybody's in our pocket for everything. You're quite right. Does it mean you just end up with a load of different services that target certain areas? The underground goes back underground, and people who are interested in music get to go and seek it out and be pioneers and can be nerdy about it, and and have that sense of pride in discovering things, because not everything can be mainstream. But like you said, those were business arguments. They weren't artistic arguments.
On a business point, though, and I didn't get to read the article. I saw it this morning right before we went live. But did the author or that guy, the main guy, talk about YouTube at all?
I don't think it's mentioned.
No,
it's Google, of course. They're massive. But YouTube, I wonder how many videos which are much bigger than a single tiny MP3 or WAV, how many videos on YouTube go up every single day? And, there's music going up on there. There's all that type of stuff. If he omitted that and was talking about this, it seems to give even more faulty premise. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I thought...
Curtis raised his hand.
In answer to your question, 3.7 million new videos per day.
And how many songs go on Spotify? 100,000?
100,000 per day. So 100,000 per day for Spotify, and then 3.7 million per day to YouTube. Now,
and what's bigger, a video?
That's what I'm saying, or a tiny MP3. That's
Well, I hope that my MP3s of Curtis are not being uploaded through DistroKid. High quality WAVs. That's the.
Well, you
that's
know
the
what I
only
mean,
thing,
though.
yeah.
Even a WAV is a gig at most, probably. You know, something if it's so. It's the fact that if that's not mentioned, and I know that's slightly, what do you want to say, apples to oranges. I get that, but it's still like Taylor Swift's music videos are being uploaded, and artists are uploading videos every day, and a lot of videos on YouTube are 10, 13, 15, 20 minutes, 4K. I mean, we're talking massive files.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want the full high quality videos for ours, for example, you can subscribe and catch our clips throughout the week.
There you go.
This is at 720, but the full HD, they get posted throughout the week. So,
yeah, we put 1080p on Spotify too, so we really show it to this guy. We're like, check us out on Apple and Spotify.
Well, I thought they're still streaming. Then you can't stop us streaming.
No, not at all. This is
Rich.
It's interesting I have got just thoughts and just ideas and inspiration for this dystopian future where we're all just like kind of vying for the server space. You know, it's really interesting to me because that's exactly the
Store everything, can we?
Oh yeah, exactly.
How you do? Let's film it and store it.
I mean, imagine. Can you imagine an Audionautic streaming service where just the roster of, if you're a fan of Audionautic, for example, just the roster, and you go to audionautic.com or something like that, and then you can just stream just our artists, or if you can go even more localized than that, the eonlake.com.
See, but I feel like that's so bottling and just like keeping away from discovery and the beauty of finding new music. Like
It's not.
I just, it feels like you're just missing out on expanding with different kinds of things and playlists and finding people's influences. Like, I love on Spotify, and I have my issues with Spotify, but in terms of the actual listening to music, going to someone's, either if they make their own playlist of influences or listeners also listen to and just seeing what else is out there, or even just like going on Wikipedia and seeing if an artist listed their influences and just finding the influences, going back and tracing how this has progressed in terms of sound and things like that.
Yeah.
Totally. I'm not saying you can't do that, but I mean, you could log on to curtis.com and see what I've been listening to,
But could you, if it was like a completely separate, decentralized, like
you just link to their website.
And I was thinking,
it's just an extra step.
Everybody publishes, links to their music to the same place. It's just it's not all there. It just redirects you to wherever you need to go.
Okay. So it's like you're following links and down a rabbit hole, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason why that couldn't work. I mean, it would be interesting. I feel like if something like that was to occur, you'd have to be a lot more invested in the artist and what they're doing to go to that, because that would be like self-created, as opposed to
Well, no, I just see it as a service that doesn't actually try and take all of the content and put it in a data center. That kind of leaves the content where it is, but still delivers it to all the people that are interested in it.
What they call like an RSS feed kind of thing for music.
Yeah, RSS.
Yeah, kind of like torrenting or however it needs to work. Something like that. In essence, a bit like Shady said, going backwards a little step.
Just go to physical. We could just send by mail. Like, here's our influences. This.
But yeah, I think the main point is that guy dissed the algorithm in that article. He properly dissed the algorithm, so he'll be dead by tomorrow. And
yeah, of course,
the Spotify mafia is coming.
Yeah.
He's going to have a fall. He's going to fall out of several windows.
Horse's head in his bed, right?
Don't diss the algorithm. Get away with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We'd like to know what you guys think. Listen in the chat, watching back, listen to a clip of this that we've made, for example. What are your thoughts? This idea, server space is finite, and this is, where is it going to go? What's the future of this? We're all artists in the modern era. How do you think this is going to affect us? This is
Is what this guy's saying a problem? Are we a problem? This flood.
Are we a problem?
Or is it the man? Or is the man the problem?
Are we confusing consumers?
Should we revert to carrier pigeons to get our music out there? Drop in a pigeon, check it out.
So if you like that clip, consider going across to YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Music to check the full Audionautic Deep Space Network live stream.
Yeah, and if you want to join us for the next live stream, they are on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. UTC.
And finally, we do have the Audionautic radio playlist, which is in the description below. Some of the greatest cross-section of the underground electronic world that you see. IDM, ambient, down-tempo, you name it, it's in there. It's great. Curated by Sunwarper.
Yeah, so if you're looking to find some new music or just see what's new in the electronic sphere, head to that link in the description, and we hope to see you at the next Audionautic Deep Space Network.
Thanks for watching. See you around. Speaking of things that people will see, I was thinking about it, but I can't make that segue. Let's have a look at the marketing, shall we?
I was going to say, it is something people will see because they'll see their Wrapped. Spotify Wrapped. You were almost there. You were so close. Good. I had a whole thing about like Spotify Wrapped is coming, like, you know, winter is coming from Game of Thrones, because get ready for a gazillion stories and posts of like what your top 5 listens are and things like that. And I think it is cool. I like that aspect, to see what people are listening to. I also like seeing what I've been listening to, because like I was mentioning to my wife, my listens this year have been completely different from normal. Like a lot of more workout playlists that I make, which are metal and things like that. And then I've got the Audionautic playlist, and then, you know, all this stuff. I've been trying to listen to new music. So I'm excited to see how different it's going to be, because for 9 years or 8 years straight, the same song was my number 1 song, Constants Are Changing from Boards of Canada. An incredible song, but I'm curious to see if something will top it this time. We'll see. But it's really cool to see, and I wanted to cover it because Spotify is doing something. It's not a lot, but it's something for artists that you can incorporate and can incorporate you into your listeners' Spotify Wrapped.
I want to share the screen here. Yeah, so Spotify Wrapped, we all know as it comes through. Personally, I enjoy it for myself, and then obviously you kind of bite your tongue as everyone else shares there. It's fine. So I think this is the best representation that we can see here. So we've got, I think that's BTS. Sorry if it's another nondescript K-pop band. We've got Dua Lipa here, and I have no idea who these. Oh, this Coldplay. I
was gonna say artist. Yeah. We have artists.
All the greats.
Here we have Nickelback.
So we'll just focus on that. It's fine. But so you can make an intro video, right? That's as far as I
know. Just scroll down a little bit. That's a perfect representation, but here is where they talk about it. Get personal with a video message. Now, it sounds like from the writing, I can't actually read it at the moment. Maybe zoom in a little bit. But it sounds like you're not guaranteed to be put in anyone's Wrapped. But it doesn't seem like that much effort. You can make up to a 30-second quote, their quotes, thank you video on a mobile device, they say. It has to be vertical. And they say, make sure your video has no music, singing, or lyrics, no explicit content, no logos or brands, and no added text, graphics, or filters. So one thing maybe you could do, I don't know, just if you're not comfortable going in front of the camera, you could maybe create some sort of canvas or something like that and just talk over it. I think the key thing here is the talking, but basically you're just giving a thank you for everyone listening. I have a feeling it may only pop up if you're someone's number 1 listen or something, or maybe in your top 5 or something. I don't know. We'll see. They're not saying, but I think they say record a video to let fans know what their support meant to you in 2022. You can thank your fans, tease what you're working on next, or tell a story that defined your year. They're talking about stories, so there's a clue. Even they're saying get an interesting story, and you know, so that's probably the more interesting, maybe, if it's not just an algorithm, which it might be. Here it is. Upload your video through Spotify for Artists as soon as possible, no later than November 18th, so you got a few weeks, for an opportunity to be featured in your fans' 2022 Wrapped experience on Spotify. So, no guarantee, and it also sounds like they're going to be incorporating some new functionality to Wrapped this year with video and things like that.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money there. I think I read through the email that I got through to my inbox the other day, and it was saying if you're someone's top artist, then it will pop up.
Oh, did it say that? Okay.
And unless anyone's listening to Curtis, unless any of my 1,000 or so followers on Spotify are on their top listener,
you never know. And that I did want to mention that Spotify. Spotify Wrapped for Artists is very interesting if you want to see your progression and trends and where people are listening to you, how you're developing, if you care about Spotify at all. And we always say it's important to get your music everywhere. I mean, unless you have a complete issue with Spotify, which is totally justifiable, I would recommend getting your music up there because it's a way to get people to find you and funnel them to Bandcamp, things like that. It's a very interesting way to see your growth and trends, at least on Spotify. And just really quickly, I wanted to mention, I had posted, it's anecdotal, of course, but I had posted a story when Radiant Visage came out, and I said, hey, let me know if you want a link to the album, and I put Spotify, Apple Music, or Bandcamp, and it was 72% wanted Spotify. So if you don't put your music there, you are missing some listens. If you care about those ethical issues and things of that nature with streaming and stuff, I understand. I'm not saying you have to do it, but it is something to consider just seeing those numbers.
It is definitely the place where people try before they buy. And that's just the way it is. And as we've continued down this road, when you employ things like that consistency and you kind of get your feet into the game of the engine and running, you know, people do listen and then people tag on and they hit that follow button and they do just keep listening to whatever you have. And before you know it, you got people messaging you saying, hey, really love the new track. And this one that you made 3 years ago, that's pretty okay too. I mean, not as good, but I mean, hey, still quite nice.
Well, isn't that an interesting discussion moving into that fan study we're going to talk about?
Yeah, completely. Yes. So we have a brand new fan study coming through. Sunwarper, tell us all about this.
Yeah, well, I saw it. A fan study is something Spotify does, and if you're on Spotify for Artists, you can read these fan studies. They're very interesting. Even if you don't use Spotify or have your music on Spotify, it's interesting to see where listens are happening, what type of music is charting, all this stuff, just out of sheer curiosity. This is our marketing section, so we're talking about marketing. They put up a new one that I was like, this is Eon Lake all over it. And it's about catalog. Because Eon Lake always talks about how he hates everything is now, you got to have a new song every week or month. You got to have the newest thing. It's got to be the newest thing. Have the chorus at the start of a song. I'm sure he can rant much better than I.
Chuck it in the bin and do another one next week.
And he may have a rant incoming, but it might be a positive rant due to this thing. But the study is talking about what they call catalog, also known as discography. Sorry, not discovery. They're saying old tracks can learn new tricks. What they have on this metric is that as of 2022, almost a third of charting songs are catalog or old songs.
Now, I wonder if this is to do with very successful sync placements.
Well, they talk about that down below, aren't you? Man, you are on it. Curtis, go back to the screen. I wanted to talk because there is a bit of a thing I wanted to mention in terms of, I wonder if there's a detriment to the constant new music, because it said people under 25 have increased their listens of songs from the 80s. I'm just wondering if there's a thing maybe to be said about not necessarily quality, but, you know, artists were spending time on music back then, and maybe there's something there. I don't know. I think music done quickly can be really incredible, but I just thought it was interesting that they said people under 25. I think it's at the very bottom, but they talk about the sync licensing there, and I think they have Running Up That Hill and a couple other really big songs. So I'm sure you're right, but yeah, nostalgia has no age. That's the one. Younger listeners dig the oldies.
There's a bit of a lag. It's destroying my C drive.
We'll switch it off in a second. I just wanted to show that chart. So younger listeners dig the oldies. For listeners under 25, over the past 4 years, their portion of total streams represented by music from the 80s has increased by 45%. Also something probably to be said about synthwave music and vaporwave and all those things. But I just thought it was interesting, and I think it brings up an interesting question of, like, why are people listening to that beyond just the sync placements and things like that?
Because the thing is, when I was young, it was kind of deeply uncool to listen to anything before your time. There seems to be an attitude that is pervasive now. I think people are more prepared to look at stuff from back in the day before they were born, maybe, and listen to what was going on, partly because of these TV shows and, you know, being able to pick some of the gold from days gone by. I don't know, but it's good that changes anyway.
Yeah. Do you have anything? I'd love to hear your take on all this information, because you always talk about this. So I'm just curious to see what your thought is on it.
Well, I just, you know, we're artists, right? The disposable nature of what we do is not good for what we do, is it? I mean, it's encouragement that everything's got to be new, and, you know, if it's not new, then it's somehow of less value. You know, we know it's not true, but at the same time, you know, there are certain companies that's how their platform works. You know, they're not trying to destroy music, even if they are. That's how their platform works. That's the nature of what they're doing. It's not everything. I mean, if there's one thing I've learned from listening to your marketing tips and all this information that we put out, it's that it varies per platform, and your approach really should be tailored per platform.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's encouraging that, you know, music that already exists, heritage artists are still getting a look in, that people are looking, you know, to not just what the industry is ramming in their face, you know, because to a certain extent, that's what it is, right? I mean, that's what they spent their money on. That's what they bought up all the radio slots for you to hear. That's what you're going to be listening to, right? Because somebody spent money on it and they need their money back. So be an obliging soul. So it's nice to see that there is still, you know, real life going on. People going, what's that? I like that. I'm going to listen to that. Mm-hmm. You know, there's the sort of thing that we used to do and still do now. And it's the sort of thing that keeps smaller artists going, really. It's just the fact that somebody can stumble across it and go, oh, I like that. I'll have it. Thanks.
I'll have that. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. And Curtis, what about you? Oh, I'm sorry, Ian. Go ahead.
I don't think I'll be filming a thank you message for Spotify this year. I think I'll probably take the year off if it's we need to be number one. But I will say, if anyone has ever listened to me on any platform at any time, any of my songs, thank you. If you know me at all, you'll know that I'm very grateful. And that's my thank you. I won't be putting one on Spotify.
Well, I just
I could use it.
I'm waiting for my Christmas
who wrote her songs.
I just wanted to say, though, why not spend 30 seconds, though, just writing? You never know. There might be someone that listens to it, or maybe that's not true and we read it wrong or something, that it might go into someone's...
I don't know. Yeah, maybe you could...
I mean, I'm hoping to hear your voice on my Spotify rap. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, that's
you know, I'm like, it's a personal.
You want me to record a message for you?
I would like that. Yeah.
You give me a cut rate. I can use all these dirty words you like.
No, I want it clean, man. Curtis, what about you?
I think it's good. I see it as kind of like a. I wonder. I don't see it. I wonder if it's kind of like the phase 2 or phase 3 of Spotify. Like Spotify kind of like it grew, and the quick paced notion of Spotify, the radio and the new releases every week and all that stuff. That's how they needed to kind of establish themselves as the giants they are. Mm-hmm. And like you say, you know, like there are people now coming back and going back through discographies, back through catalogs, back to see the older stuff, that kind of thing, and. Because it's all there and it's all free. It's
never been easier, right?
Exactly. It's never been easier. It's never been so cheap to do, which is obviously, I mean, we're not going to get into the whole artist payment debate now, but it's kind of, it's refreshing to see. I wonder if we're going to keep on seeing it. I wonder if we're going to keep on, if it's going to, we know that Spotify is going down a more kind of like social media route. We know it's going down to more Exactly. We know this. We know it's kind of turning into a new YouTube specifically for music. And I wonder if this is going to be a space. We've talked a lot this episode about people, or the need to create a story, the need to create a space, the need to create a pocket of space on the internet for your music and your story. Bandcamp does it to an extent, but it doesn't do it great. And I wonder if Spotify, being the giant it is, we're going to see more of that.
Would you classify Bandcamp as a giant now, though, being owned by Epic?
Well, I mean, it's
in its like growing phase, I'm sure, but I'm still very curious to see what's going to come from that, because they're laying dormant right now, but I think something's going to happen there.
Well, they're not. I wouldn't say they're laying dormant. Well, I mean, they're laying dormant, but they have just released this week. They have got a ton of job openings, so they are doing something.
That's true. That's true. So something's
the dragon is stirring, so to speak.
That's a nice way to put it.
It's owned by China as well. That fucking works.
Well, does Epic owned by like 50%? China or something?
I think it's Tencent.
Tencent? Yeah.
Maybe they can correct us.
Really quickly, though, Hydro Fighter in the chat says he's going to edit Eon's thank you message and add it to his Spotify. Yeah, well, then maybe I'll still get that message on my Spotify rap. So it's a win-win for me. I say go for it, Hydro Fighter. But before we go off, I just want to ask, and if you're listening to this later, you can put it in the comments. Do you use Spotify as an artist? Are you planning to do one of these videos? And what's your take on the video aspect of it? Where do you think it's maybe going?
Yeah. I think if you're anything like me, you need to look at it and imagine somebody else in the marketing, because they pick like, you know, mega famous people and it all looks a little bit on rails and cheesy. Maybe try and put somebody that you really like on there when you look at it and make up your mind about what you think.
Just give that Aphex Twin smile, you know?
Exactly, yeah. Just take a cup of window liquor. Oh, yeah, actually, it's not such a bad idea.
I mean, it's interesting you say, like, obviously, if we're looking at the three, we had BTS, we had Dua Lipa, and we had Coldplay. Three of the most mainstream pop-y artists that you get, right? They're obviously going to have some really cheesy...
write their own songs.
Exactly. We're not going to have something cheesy, and they're going to be like, oh, hey, thank you so much for doing this, all that jazz, right? But, I mean, I've got 1,500 listeners on Spotify. There is no way that I'm going to do something cheesy like that. I'm going to probably say, thanks, Mum. I really like the fact that you're listening to my work.
Isn't that kind of cheesy nice. In its own right?
It's like, just, you can play. What I'm saying is, you can play with it. You can have a bit of fun with it. You don't necessarily have to do something that's pandering. Just be you.
And
just
I mean, Spotify says, Spotify says don't do this or that, but I mean, yeah, exactly. You don't know if you're even going to get on it, especially, you know, if you're a small independent artist. So do what you want. If you want to do some crazy, it's like, cool visualizer or something, go for it, you know? You never know if it gets on it. It might be memorable, and there's your story again, and we're tying back into having a memorable story.
Look at that. And I think that's a good way to put it. I mean, just make it look good, dude.
Mom, do a little dance.
I might just put Obi, my dog.
Yeah,
like Obi appreciates you listening to my music. Hey, he's the cute one, not me, so I might as well.
Exactly.
Thanks to you.
I think so. We'd like to know what you're planning for your Spotify wrapped up, if that's what you're going to be doing. But yeah.
Hydro Fighter did answer. He said, Spotify isn't my thing. I think the message option is great for people on the larger level who don't have the ability to reach out to each fan on a personal basis. Yeah. That's true. But I do still think, I mean, video and just talking is a very good way to connect with someone, whether you're big or small. So I wouldn't just neglect that type of format.
Yeah.
Whatever size or, you know, anything that you are as a musician.
So if you like that clip, consider going across to YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Music to check the full Audionautic Deep Space Network live stream.
Yeah, and if you want to join us for the next live stream, they are on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. UTC.
And finally, we do have the Audionautic Radio playlist, which is in the description below. Some of the greatest cross-section of the underground electronic world that you see. IDM, ambient, down-tempo, you name it, it's in there. It's great. Curated by Sunwarper.
Yeah, so if you're looking to find some new music or just see what's new in the electronic sphere, head to that link in the description, and we hope to see you at the next Audionautic Deep Space Network.
Thanks for watching. See you around. We've had a bit of chat in the Twitter through people messaging us and just generally as we tweet out, talking about pads a lot this week. We've been seeing about how people make the pads, which admittedly for me as well has always been a bit of a struggle to find a decent pad sound. I don't have anything like that. So I wanted to have a look at our pads. What are we using to create our lush, thick, warm, or cold, or whatever kind of pads you're going for? What is consistently on our effects rack? What is consistently being used is our DAW. Not specifically soft synths, not hard synths, soft synths. So that
specifically soft synths.
Specifically soft synths.
Oh, so not hardware. Okay.
Not hardware. What are we using as a VST? I know that we have all been. I know some more people dabbling and moving away from soft synths.
My next album is pretty much all DAW, so I just do the DAW stuff for YouTube and things like that, and put the DAW stuff into it for further processing.
Yeah. So I mean, there's been a bit of a buzz in the Twitter world this week. So let's see what have we got. If we've got them free, maybe we can find them, send some links out. If they're paid, you know, some people buy their synths. I mean, God forbid. And then, let's have a look, shall we? Eon Lake, do you want to kick us off? What soft synths are you consistently using in your?
Cherry Audio's DCO 106, which is like a soft Juno.
Okay,
it sounds pretty good. It's it's old school in the sounds that it creates, but that's pretty much why I'm using it when I use it. Also, the ARC 2600 that they do, it's a CA 2600. I also use Audier's Zone, although that tends towards really sort of modern sounds and stuttery sounds.
It's very glitchy, yeah,
and glitchy stuff on it. What is the other one? It's a D16 group. It's their. I'm just having a look now. Lush 101 gets used a lot. It's like It's like an SH 101 in software, but stacks of polyphony and a load of extra functionality thrown in. It sounds great. I use that a lot, as well as their Foscion thing, which is essentially a 303. Okay. I use that one too. So there's actually quite a lot. There's some old stuff by Full Bucket Audio as well that have got some monster sort of analog replica thing that fills your whole screen. Has got a ton of voices. That one's great for ambient stuff. But yeah, I've got a bunch of other ones that I cycle in and out and so on, but I tend to use those ones a lot. They tend to be the go-to ones.
And is there any particular reason that you're drawn to them, or is it just because the sounds that they have sound amazing?
So when I'm making pad sounds, I'm either going to go one of several routes. I either want to play a lot of notes, in which case, it's going to be software. It's either, well, if I'm not using my digital poly, it will be software, because for the polyphony. So if you want to do sort of analog poly sounds, but can't afford an analog poly, like me, you use software, don't you? Like I said in the chat. So I use it for things like that. But sometimes pad sounds are actually just like one or two notes and an absolute ton of delay and reverb, so that I'm actually running notes into each other and building a chord that way, almost by playing a really slow arpeggio and letting it sort of drift from one chord into another one, where you're almost like crossfading between chords. That was the idea in my head anyway. And it's the kind of what I think of mentally as the taiko approach, where you've got something that's actually only playing one note, but you've got that much ambience on it that you can create a bit of a swirl.
That works. All right, Sunwarper, where are you at?
I got a couple strategies, I guess, similar to Eon Lake. One of the biggest, though, is just a guitar through Supermassive.
That's hardware, bro.
Well, no, the plugin is what's making the difference. You could use a free guitar plugin if you wanted to. So, no, it is software. The main part of it is you can even do a piano VST. I've done it before using Supermassive with 100% wet, and it just becomes this drifting with that modulation it's got. Also, basically mine is take any sound and put it through lush amounts of reverb, delay, and I always use some sort of tape emulation, either the Arturia. God, I always forget the name. What is that one we use? Mellowfi. Yeah, it's just like I've got a mind block. The Mellowfi is like on everything, and then even putting it through chorus, delay, reverb, Supermassive, anything like that. Synth-wise, I like Europa. As I mentioned, it's very modular in how you want to shape it. It has built-in effects, and then you can add more. Diva is incredible, but it is a CPU drain. And even kind of similar to Eon Lake, taking something like the Spitfire Labs, is it BBC Orchestra, that free orchestra sound, and doing like cello or violins or both as two separate ones, and dousing it in reverb or Supermassive, something like that, and doing one or two notes, maybe an octave, something like that. That creates a really lush background. I used in a lot of Future Fade tracks for the drones. It was either that or the Prophet, but I guess I can't mention the Prophet since it's hardware.
Yeah.
But just to say, I just want to say, because I don't care, the Prophet through a Big Sky, that's a winner.
Yeah. I mean, that is a winner. It's
really quick, too, in the chat, Thomas says he uses DS Thorn, Plugin Alliance, and the sampler in Ableton. Can't live without that one. For ambience, I love Granite, New Sonic Arts, and of course FX. Heaps of reverbs and delays. Yeah, I'm with you. I haven't heard of DS Thorn or Granite, but I'm going to check them out.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Yeah, it's a new one.
And I should say that it's very recent, but that Bliss Synth Megalith is definitely a pad beast. Or
this is what I was going to say.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I guess I stole your thunder.
No.
You can elaborate. I won't elaborate. Go ahead, Curtis.
Well, just to reiterate on what Sunwarper is saying, that Bliss Bliss app synth is a new into my arsenal, and I think it's going to be a heavy contender in my arsenal moving forward, because it is it's a pad beast. It's beautiful.
And just to really say the plucks and melodic sounds too. Yeah, I mean, it covers it all. So I like that for sure.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
No, not at all. I'm a big fan of the triple cheese from Yuhi. Great little synth, completely free as well. Great space sounds, and with a little bit of tweaking, you can make it your own. I love that one. Coming into, if you've got complete control, Ethereal Earth is really nice for those kind of like soundscapey ideas where it's more atonal as opposed to melodic. It's really nice for that one. Also Absinthe. I use a lot of Absinthe in there as well. Again, very luscious tones, very sweeping. The biggest one, again, we've all said it, but the biggest one, the Valhalla Supermassive. For the purpose of this, what I'll usually take, just an init patch from something like Vital or something, which is just that sawtooth sound, and then I'll just see what happens, and I'll just whack it through. The fun is, how can I make it sound as little like a sawtooth sound as I can, and just chains and chains of delay, which is then racked up in parallel and in the chain, and just go nuts with it. Basically, it's always good fun. There's plenty to be going for. The biggest contender, if you really want to fork out, I know a lot of people use it. I know Laug uses it. I know that Spacecraft use it. Omnisphere, it's a classic, absolute classic. Expensive, but a magic box of toys that does everything. So yeah, that's my one.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I always prefer to try to find the sound from combining multiple things. Like, that's what I love. But that's just sound design, just having fun with sound design. But taking, like you said, a saw sound, like a very simple sound, and then adding the effects and creating something of your own from a bunch of different sounds. That's my preferred way. But we'd love to hear some more from the chat. If anybody else has any soft synths, apparently is the rule here, that they use, or plugins or effects in a DAW to create pads, let us know. We're all trying to grow and learn. As we always say, together we grow. So let us know. And if any of the ones we mentioned has piqued your interest, also let us know, because we're curious to see.
And next week, Sunwarper, don't worry, we will be talking more hardware. Don't worry about it.
Okay, yeah, I was worried. I was worrying. I was starting to sweat a little, like, where's the gear, man? Where's the hardware?
Where's the gear? Give it to me now. So if you like that clip, consider going across to YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Music to check the full Audionautic Deep Space Network live stream.
Yeah, and if you want to join us for the next live stream, they are on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. UTC.
And finally, we do have the Audionautic radio playlist, which is in the description below. Some of the greatest cross-section of the underground electronic world that you see. IDM, ambient, down-tempo, you name it, it's in there. It's great. Curated by Sunwarper.
Yeah, so if you're looking to find some new music or just see what's new in the electronic sphere, head to that link in the description, and we hope to see you at the next Audionautic.
We're talking about release strategies once again, and we're discussing the idea of releasing singles. We've been talking about this back and forth in our meetings, and we've just been kind of going through it and looking at whether or not in 2022, whether or not singles are the way to go, whether it's albums, and obviously there's a bit in the middle. We have a release strategy little thing that would be cool to go through.
Yeah, why don't you read through that?
So, I mean, we live in a world where singles are a thing, and they still will always be a thing to a degree. And there's just some interesting strategies for releasing singles, because some people do really well, like Electric Callboy and Vengent, who are just some names. They always release singles, and they do really well from it. So there's some things to kind of think about.
Yeah.
So the idea of releasing a single in conjunction either ahead or just after an album release, so either following up an album release or just before, a month or two before an LP gets released. This is a bit like the Waterfall, which Sunwarper did, in the sense that he did a couple of singles. How many singles
for the Waterfall as well, the key aspect of it being a waterfall is that every single you release, you put the previous ones on that release with the same ISRC codes, the same mix and all that, so that the second you release the new single, it has all the streams already from the other one, and then everyone's listening. So if one gets picked up on a playlist and you put out the next one, those streams all go towards that release as well. So it's a waterfall. Like, that's the way they call it. It works in that respect, but that's the key aspect of a waterfall, is that you're putting all of the singles together, so it just keeps growing until the album comes out with more subsequently.
I mean, as well as that, so as well as you put them out and they come on through and they build hype and they kind of create an anticipation for the full release of the album itself, you also have the ability to make shorts and reels on and focus on a single area, which in this ADHD riddled environment in which we live is not a bad thing. It says here, the right song might just mean the right 15 seconds. If you can hone in on a particularly catchy point and hyper focus on that, that is a great way. I mean, it's not that we all do that whole TikTok marketing thing, but if you wanted something
for Instagram and YouTube
if you wanted
Shorts,
something
as
to
we're
pick up,
talking about, you know,
if you wanted something to pick up, then that is a good way of doing it. There's plenty of catchy things in Radiant Visage, for example, that can kind of put these things through, you know, and people can put their ideas to it. It says here, time your singles strategically before and after. So we talked about the original one, the single before the LP release in its own right, but then there is always the follow-up after. But it says like here, so they pepper you through. So you got that, if you want to hit those algorithms and that consistency of releasing, they've just kind of like little mini top-ups, so to speak, which from my experience work if I wasn't very consistent with mine this year. I put a couple of singles out here and there, but there wasn't enough to catch anything, which is fair enough. The idea of it is if you do it consistently enough, the algorithm will respond to you. Stockpile various kinds of recordings for later use. So I suppose this comes from if you're making so many tracks that you are not releasing them all.
Or if you don't use some, you have B-sides, things like that. I should also add, for the timing around an EP or LP, one thing that can work in terms of the difference between Bandcamp and streaming is that you could put those singles up as a pre-order on Bandcamp. So you're not releasing separate singles that you have to buy separately. It could be just one thing, and then you could release it as a single on Spotify, and then when the album comes out, put it out as an album or EP.
Completely. I mean, like extra versions as well, or like kind of like extended cuts for if you're buying on Bandcamp, that kind of thing.
Remixes, anything like that.
Remixes, yeah. Now this one is where I start getting my teeth start to chatter a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, this is looking at it from, I guess, more of a business or commercial aspect. So we can disregard that, I suppose, unless you're trying to get on playlists.
Unless you're trying to get on playlists, yeah, completely.
Yeah, some of these things are interesting as musical exercises. I've heard of like this is no long intros and get your hook right at the front.
Yeah.
I've heard various things over the years about, you should never wait more than 2 minutes to get to the real meat and potatoes of what's going on. It's interesting to try and do that a couple of times as a songwriting exercise. I wouldn't necessarily build your life around it, but
keep your songs under 4 minutes. That Curtis, you're out right there.
A lot of people do their radio edit.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. Again, Dead Mouse, he does a lot of radio edits.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember doing Axis, and the intro is, I think, about 2.5 minutes, which would never make it to radio in its own right.
Just really quick about the pre-orders in the chat. Big Cloudy says you can't do a pre-order for an individual track on Bandcamp, as I recently discovered. Yeah, that's true. But what I meant was you put the song up as the EP or album pre-order. So when you launch the pre-order, the single is what's available to stream. I don't think you're right. You can't do individual pre-orders, and I don't know if it would work anyways, because you just put up the song but you can't stream it, or you could put like half of the song up and then change the file before it releases or something. That I guess that's something you could do.
That's one way of looking at it. The number 6 is bit of a. This is a website from.
This is a
from
really
CD
good
Baby
website, I should say, if you like to keep up on like music things as we do. I mean, you can also just subscribe to us because we talk about all this stuff too. But they give a lot of really interesting info, not just about them as a distributor, but usually at the end they tie it into why you should use them.
And that last point is absolute nonsense. Don't ever do pre-saves.
Oh yeah, as we've talked about, we have a whole short clip about pre-saves and a very interesting article talking about it. I'll link it in the description when this is over, but it's on our channel. It's our Spotify pre-saves worth it is what it's called. And the spoiler alert is they're not.
Yeah.
They're really not.
They're not.
And there's a lot of common sense in that article, and it explains all the reasons why it's a bad idea.
Just really quick to say it is that Spotify has no involvement in the process. You're giving access to your Spotify account and permissions in your Spotify account to a third party who will, when the song releases, go and like it for you. So it has nothing to do beforehand besides the third party getting your permission.
Information at all either, do they?
I think one thing that is worth putting, and it's one thing is skipping down to this number 9 here, the idea of promoting your single ahead of time and after it's released. A lot of people will do, I mean, I'm guilty of this. I've done this so many times. The idea that I've done things up until it's released, and then upon release day, I've said, "Hey, go get it." People have gone and got it,
Beat
and
up,
then
go around.
and then I'm done.
I would
It's
argue
just like-
post-release is more important because you have a place that people can go to now rather than before it releases. You can't send them anywhere, so it's just a wasted vanity. Like in my opinion, usually, you know, you get a couple hearts, but they don't get to check out the song, so it doesn't go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It says there, don't promote until your fans can take action. I mean, people,
Right there.
I forget stuff, you know. Tell me I can go and get it now, and I will, you know.
Yeah.
Tell me it's out in a month, and I'll forget, and you'll have to tell me again.
I think stemming from a personal note as well, I think if you're talking about one thing for a long time, like you can get kind of a bit jaded with it, and you go like, oh, do people really want me to continue talking about it again? But at the same time, it's what you're trying to promote. Like I've been talking about Maroon now for nearly a year, and I'm tired of talking about it to a degree, but also it's something that is going to come out, you know, soon, and people need to talk about it. And need to kind of if you want people to buy it, people need to be constantly reminded that it's coming, you know. And I think there's that little voice in the back of your brain that's saying, like, go on, don't talk about it, don't talk about it, just stay stum, stay quiet. But you got to kind of just
you have to overcome that.
Idiot.
Say, it's all right. It's all right.
yeah, don't talk about it. You know, those are some ideas about the single releases in their own right. So singles, no singles. Yes, no, maybe pros, cons, and everything. Hydro Fighter, where are you sitting?
I'm not a big fan of the singles, although, you know, I did just release the one single a month or two back.
Wasn't that like a 20-minute single, though?
So
yeah, that's fair enough.
I mean, it's not the type of single that we're talking about here to help promote an album or promote an EP or something like that. I've never been a big fan of just pushing out one or two songs. I feel like you need to have a little bit more. I think I like about half of the ideas that were presented on that site. I'm going to probably start moving towards the video thing. I'm going to record everything that I'm going to do going forward because I intend on using controllers for everything. So making the shorts and then probably releasing full videos, like what Sunwarper was just saying, is like post that stuff probably after the release, or maybe use the shorts the week or two before the next release. So it's still up in the air for me. I'm trying to figure out which direction I'm going, but I'm not a big fan of the singles releases, and I just don't like writing like that. And you know what Shady and I have done this year with our releases is we drop it on you. Boom. Mic drop.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's why I was happy to have you on here, because I wanted to talk all of our different kind of release strategies.
Are you seeing something with your new release, Sunwarper? I mean, you did like probably 3 or 4 singles before you're pushing out the full release this weekend. And you said something about the difference of Spotify and the difference of Bandcamp, because I agree with you what you say about Bandcamp, and that's where I usually lean towards. Is when I go there, I want to get the full album thing, but you guys tend to listen to Spotify quite a bit, where you might want that single out there and it's going to fall into some sort of formulated playlist somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, here's how I'm looking at it now, is that if you put a single up on Bandcamp, which I almost wouldn't necessarily advise unless you don't have an album coming or something, but a pre-release single, let's put it. If you're going to do that, I don't think I'd say to put it up individually on Bandcamp. It seems like people on Bandcamp gravitate towards larger releases, an EP, an album, multiple songs on it. Whereas on Spotify, if you look at album analytics, it's usually not very big, but a single that you can push to playlists and things like that, or a certain song will do well. And so by having multiple songs releasing consistently on Spotify, you can keep triggering that. Whereas on Bandcamp, it seems like you want to have it spaced out more with a larger release. That's why I had mentioned with Future Fade, it's just one release for a whole year, but new stuff is being added as it goes. Because it was every month I added a new song.
So Spotify and Bandcamp don't really marry up too well.
Exactly.
It's two different generations.
It's like that's what. Yeah, we put as our caption for this episode, diverging distribution, because it seems like you want to kind of do different strategies for each if you want to try to succeed in a sense, or so to speak, in both.
Singles have always existed. right? And for a reason. And I liked singles when I was a kid. I bought singles on vinyl, and they served a purpose, right? They introduced me to artists. And, to some degree, and on whatever platform, there's still an argument for that in some cases. And when we look at this stuff, the advice that various platforms give you about how to do this, if you're wanting to maximize your potential on various platforms, these arguments are valid. Although I find myself wondering, if everyone's doing this, then surely the net benefit is less, but maybe you're moving backwards by not doing it. Who knows? But at the same time, so I have all of that in my head, but then on the other hand, looking at where I am with stats and followers and so on, I'm uniquely unencumbered. I can be as artistic as I want because it doesn't really make any difference. I'm not going to worry about dropping 250,000 followers in a day or something like that, because I haven't got anything like that. I can basically do what I want and the numbers aren't going to change, which is good in a way. It's freeing, and that's the way I choose to look at it at the moment. At the moment, things are getting bunched just in the way that they happen and what they are and how I want to do it and whether I feel like. I've got nothing against singles, and I might put one out. I think I'm more likely to do a short EP though. Just it seems like better value. But at the moment, it's all very head up my own ass, just doing what I like sort of thing. Where I am an artist. my music comes out as I see fit. Because I'm not actually trying to maximize my potential. But if I did, I would probably start following some of this advice.
Curtis, what about you? What do you think?
Well, I think that the classic way is the best way to go, in the sense that the single release before an album is kind of a nice way to go in that front. Because I still believe that hype is a thing. If you're part of that community and you see it and you go, oh, there's a single coming, and you can kind of go through. For a personal note, if I've got a track that doesn't fit anywhere else, like I had Columbia come out a couple of months ago that doesn't fit with anything, and it's a very specific story for a very specific thing. It doesn't go with anything else. But yeah, and that's when they do work. I think ultimately all these strategies and all these kind of quick fixes, also to speak, they're more they're around this kind of like get rich quick scheme. I think consistency is the thing, which not so much algorithmic consistency in the sense of the Spotify, but I just think in terms of longevity. I think, for example, when I had Fragments 2 released a couple of weeks ago, Gravity Assist did quite well in terms of Spotify. It did really well on Spotify, and therefore, what I've seen as a result of that, people are going back to my really early stuff, and people are going back to Astrolab and Feelermath and stuff like that. And I've had people hitting me up, like taking things like a couple of my tracks, like Joey or something like that, which are really obscure tracks that no one really pays attention to. But then suddenly people are finding them, and they're being put onto playlists themselves in their own right. And I haven't changed anything. I don't do much social media. I do more social media for Audionautic than I do for me. But I'm now seeing the benefits of that come through to my stuff, just because I'm just consistent and I just keep putting stuff out, essentially. That's my way. I think release a single if you've got a single to go for. And okay, if you're going to release an LP, have a single to accompany that. Sure, why not do that the old school way? That works. Yeah. But there's no these strategies. A lot of them, I think that it comes down to consistency. If you're releasing semi-consistent, once a quarter, once every 6 months or something like that, I think that's more important than anything else, really, to be honest.
Our podcast is on Apple Podcast and Spotify, and so if you like to listen to podcasts over there, you can head over to Audionautic on it. The links are also in the description. And if you'd be so kind as to leave a rating and or a review, it helps a ton, and we appreciate it. And if you need some new music, check out the Audionautic Radio playlist. That is also in the description. It's updated about every week. There's some really cool tracks on there, and if there's anything you want to submit, you can DM myself or the Audionautic Twitter, and we'll give it a listen.
So yeah, thank you very much. See you next week. Take it easy.
Thanks for watching.